you'll see like a greater beauty and diversity arising, but it's not like people that are blonde-haired and blue-eyed will go away entirely. That's just not what you'd expect scientifically. So even the idea that this is going to be extinguished by interbreeding is just false.
Could you say a bit more about that so-called Indo-European recessive gene? That's new to me. You said that's something that's becoming more and more prominent?
Yeah, so it's coming more prominent. I mean, one of the things that's really disturbing, people who do mass shootings, they appeal to all sorts of things, but the Buffalo shooter in particular appealed to something called replacement theory. And so that's like an idea that actually arises in there's a Camus, a novelist, not the one you're thinking about, but a different one, in France, who wrote a novel called The Great Replacement. And except for it's in French, so I don't know how to speak French. but the idea is that how what native white people in Europe are being replaced by immigration by elites. It's kind of a reference to Jews. So it's like this very, very racist idea. And what's powerful about it is that there is this sense of a lot of cultural change happening. And when we talk about creating diversity, one of the most common internal experiences that you can have is, well, wait a minute, if we're getting other people here, am I not going to be able to have as much stuff, right? Am I going to get replaced? And we kind of tend to have that very zero-sum sort of thinking, right? And so there's a lot of feeling like that, and it just ends up being a very, very powerful, explanatory, emotional appeal to people. And so what's weird is it started in Europe, but it's actually moved over to the United States. And so this guy is talking about the native populations being replaced. I mean, a lot of people are, but wait a minute. As I recall, it was really the Native Americans that were native, not white people, but that's part of it because it has this European origin, actually. And this idea, what it does is that actually reframes the narrative so they're the victims, right? And they feel victimized. So this idea of me marrying a white woman is a direct assault on their values. Isn't that weird how that happens? And it really, really feels that way to them. So, I can see why it's addictive and it's an attractive view. Now, the actual science of it is interesting. So it turns out that this question of what happens when dominant genes, first of all, I'm Indian. Indo-European is actually a language category. It's not you can't actually assign genes to Indo-European categories, but okay, and then I think he forgot that I was Indian. Well, I don't know what to make sense of that with. But he's really trying to just basically say white genes versus black genes, right? And this actually comes up really early on in genetics. So have you guys heard of Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium? It was addressing this precise question. The question is, there was actually a scientific meeting, when someone was saying that it was like questioning this idea of genetics and how useful it is, because this idea of brachydactyly, which is like shortened fingers, that basically that's a dominant thing. So he says, well, that's just going to eventually end up kind of dominating the entire population then. And it was Hardy who basically went and analyzed that and said, actually, no, that's not the case at all. If there's no selective pressure, it'll just stay low. That's not what's going to happen. And I think what will happen is, different races are mixing, is that maybe some of our archetypes will fall apart, and you'll see more people, for example, with blue eyes and black hair. But it's not like blue eyes are going to go away. You'll see like a greater beauty and diversity arising, but it's not like people that are blonde-haired and blue-eyed will go away entirely. That's just not what you'd expect scientifically. So even the idea that this is going to be extinguished by interbreeding is just false. But that pseudoscience kind of plays into it, right? He's kind of appealing to that. And it's funny, like he's like some random guy on the internet, and I'm a freaking professor in this space, and he's talking down to me. I have to say, one of the things that I do notice, and I don't think that this is merely perception. I've talked to other people who are not white in the conversation, particularly African Americans. I think I just observe that I am talked down to far more frequently than my white colleagues in public engagement. Like far more frequently. It is like considered acceptable. I don't think people have to call me doctor or professor. I don't care about that. But it is far more common than I'm comfortable with that people will insist on calling me Mr. Swamidass. Why do they do that? I mean, fine, call me Josh if you want to or whatever, but why that? I mean, it's like a specific disrespect. One of the things that even happened in some of the debate about my book is that there was it was an evolutionary creationist actually, who took to starting to talking about me to other people is calling him your boy. And when I said, I think I'm not a boy. I'm a professor, I'm a scientist, and I'm not owned by anyone. Now, people can say things kind of not getting it. I think the response was very telling. He basically threatened to sue me over it for falsely accusing him of racism. And then went on to continue calling me your boy. What do you make of that? Like, I just don't know of any white scholar that has experienced anything like that in the debate. And that was happening casually on the website of a major organization in the debate. And when it was pointed out to them that this was happening, what they said is that I just need to get it a thicker skin. Now, I'm not trying to present myself as a victim here. This person has no role in my tenure decisions. I'm a tenure professor. I think I think part of the reason why this is happening is because my ideas were strong and they were convincing people. And so if you can't really deal with ideas, then you attack the person personally. And race is just such an easy thing to exploit. It's just so deeply there. So I mean, I doubt this person has even really done anything like this to anyone else. It's just that because I've kind of hit that glass ceiling and gone beyond it, people will say this sort of stuff. So I just think it's actually really, really common.